or the Indus civilization or Harappan civilization, as the terminology has many takes and many different nomenclatures adopted by scholars. Basically, I would be talking about my research in the lower Drishadvati Plains. I mean, it's a small river. It was joining the river Saraswati, or the which is that is identified with the modern day Ghaggar Hakada river system, which flows through India and Pakistan, and ultimately it drains into the great run of Kutch. So this river is a tributary of a great river system. And to introduce the civilization itself, I mean, many of you might be knowing about the past discoveries and the various researches that have been carried out over the course of 100 years. We'll be celebrating 100 years of the announcement of the discovery of Indus civilization or the Harappan civilization in 1924. This actually, the first announcement was made in 1924 by Sir John Marshall, and in 2024 we'll be celebrating the anniversary. And many of us know how immediately the artifacts coming from West Asia, it gave a definite chronology in the absence of radiocarbon dates, and subsequent researchers in various parts of the subcontinent gave us a very good understanding of the formative phases of the Harappan civilization, and slowly how it emerged into the urban phase. So now we have a very firm footing, very firm understanding of the chronology of the formative phases, the regionalization era, the early Chalcolithic phases, and the emergence of towns and cities, emergence of various technology, and ultimately the Harappan civilization. So we have a better understanding of how this civilization spread across different regions. We have different regional manifestations. We have a separate manifestation in Gujarat, where it is known as Sorat Harappan. And we have some isolated sites also, like in the Badakhshan region of Afghanistan. So we have a variety of regional characteristics. We have a core Harappan cultural elements defined by various aspects of its material culture, but we also have many regional manifestations. We have many regional identities. So the Drishadvati region, it has some of regional manifestations I would like to share, because it has a very early beginning and also continued well along with the Harappan civilization or the Harappan culture when it spread into this region, but it retained its regional variation or the regional characteristics in terms of material culture and certain elements which we will be looking into. So we have all these understandings. I will skip all these things. Comparing the chronology of the site of Karanpura, which I will be talking about, which I think represents one of the most important cultural element in this lower Drishadvati region. Earlier, it used to be Soti and Siswal. There were two sites, again on the Drishadvati, one downstream of Karanpura, and another Siswal that is upstream of Karanpura. They were identified with a separate ceramic complex, and it was very well defined at the site of Kalibangan, where we have a host of ceramic traditions that can be identified with the early Harappan phase of this region, that can be datable around 3000 to 2500 BC. But at the site of Karanpura, we have a definite habitational layers, habitational deposit, where we understand the various developments that were happening, the introduction of the regional style of ceramics we can see into, and it is supported by the radiocarbon dates. We have a host of radiocarbon dates that dates the earliest level to around 3000 BC, and we have a long continuity. And then we see elements of Harappan culture, even though it's very minimal. We see major elements entering into this region, and that is also manifested at the site of Karanpura. Looking to the location itself, Karanpura is located somewhere here. If you can see my laser pointer, It's somewhere located here. It's in the lower Drishadvati region, and Kalibangan and Banavali and Rakigadi are some of the very important sites which are in the close vicinity. If we again look into the settlement pattern, and if we draw a 75 kilometer radius, we see Kalibangan and Rakigadi, they are equidistant from Karanpura, and also some of the other settlements like Ropod in Punjab and Kalibangan, Rakigadi putting together. There was some sort of an settlement hierarchy existing here, putting together all those sites of Banavali, Kunal, and Birdana, which are other important sites located on the river Gaggar that is identified with Saraswati. River Gaggar is flowing here, and Drishadvati is flowing in this direction, and ultimately it is joining downstream of Kalibangan near Suratgarh. So this is the scenario, and the present situation here in this region is large scale spread of agriculture facilitated due to the canal irrigation. So the canal irrigation has reached far and wide. So the villages, they have availability of water, and they level the field everywhere, and they destroy most of the areas just to reach the fertile surface. So this is true in the case of Karanpura also. This is the situation more or less there. At many places we can see sand dunes reaching very great heights. Like this is the sand dune near Rangmahal site. It looks like a hill, but it dates back much earlier. But coming to Karanpura, we can see the entire site is covered with at least a 30 to 40 centimeter of wind blown sand all over the site, and that is also true in this entire area. Even if one goes to the other sites like Soti or Siswal, or even very close to Karanpura, there are a few early historic sites. We can see a general pattern of wind-blown sand covering everywhere. So the general pattern is that the villages, they remove this sandy layer, and they reach the original land surface, and then they start cultivation. But in the case of Karanpura, what happened is that they could not cultivate because of a large number of ceramics present at the site. So they completely leveled the site. They removed nearly 1.5 meters of the cultural levels, the Harappan period deposits completely, and they were started digging these kind of trenches. So this is the general mechanism of removing the ancient mounds in Haryana, Rajasthan, and Punjab. Wherever you go, one can see these kind of trenches, so that they can park the tractors or the carriage vehicles here, and they can put the earth from the both sides, and they gradually remove and level the complete site. Here, one of the exposed section gave us a very good understanding of the kind of ceramics, even though we could not date them at that particular point of time when we were visiting before the excavations, but it gave a fair idea about some of the ceramics comparable with that of the Kalibangan, early Harappan period remains of Kalibangan. So this induced us to carry out investigations further in the site, and these were some of the ceramics which we found from the surface, very typical of the Kalibangan fabrics. But interestingly, we did not find any of them in the early Harappan level. This particular ceramics, which is famously known as the incised ware, it wasn't found in the early Harappan levels at Karanpura, uh, unlike at Kalibanga, where it is found predominantly only in the early Harappan levels. So these were some of the surface finds which clearly gave us a very good understanding of the antiquity of the site, and particularly the grinding stones with this typical black streak. Thanks to Randella, we now know where these kind of grinding stones come, and we can really understand how these grinding stones might have reached even Harappa. So the wide networks might have been present during that particular period of time. So we excavated, and a good deposit of early Harappan period, particularly because we lost most of the late Harappan, the Harappan levels. So we could have a very good account of the early Harappan period corresponding to the Soti Siswal phase of early Harappan period here in this site, and that is datable to through a set of radiocarbon dates to around 3000 BCE, and there was a continuity of up to 2000 BCE, and the last phase of occupation, nearly 1 meter to 1.5 meter of occupation, was completely leveled and removed, as I told before. So this was the picture after nearly two seasons of excavations. And when we started excavating, we found large areas again, as I told, completely leveled and removed by the villagers, but we could find certain areas where early Harappan structures were found. I mean, some house complexes with some heart remains, and also some sort of a structure whose original purpose we could not understand, with an enigmatic shape. But these gave us a very good understanding of some of the earliest occupational levels, nearly 5 phases of structural activities of the brick size in the 1:2:3 ratio in this region, as demonstrated from other sites. Also, the brick ratio is different from the Indus region, where it is 1:2:4, but here it is 1:2:3, and there were larger brick sizes, and the associated house complexes we could find. Again, it was very close to the surface. They were using this area for agricultural activities. They have repeatedly plowed this area, and it was very difficult to kind of understand the architecture here. Nevertheless, some house plans could be understood from this region, but this phase, at the fag end of this phase, it was marked by a large scale conflagration, and we could see remains of burnt floors from many of the house complexes inside. And the ceramics, particularly from this early Harappan phase, it was very interesting. It's a bichrome ceramic, very akin to the Soti Siswal ceramic complex, which we know already from the other sites. But here we have a very good collection of ceramics, and also some developments and other associated ceramics, like these kind of ceramics with a blackish band around the shoulder and the neck, but with some grooved patterns very similar to the reserved slipware of the Gujarat region, but it's a different ceramic altogether. And this is present in many of the sites, like even in Farmana it's present, even in Banavali it is present. So it has a wide range of occurrence. And additional to that is this kind of low incised wares, which is on the exterior. These low incisions could be found, and very interestingly, I saw some of the recently published ceramics from Ganeshwar, Jodhpura. There also similar set of ceramics have been found. Again, this has a wide occurrence. It's found in Farmana and other sites. So again, this combined together, these constitute the Soti Siswal ceramics, which we could not understand earlier. I mean, we have been reading a lot about Soti Siswal ceramic phase, but when we look closely into this ceramics, it has a very long evolution here. We have the decorative patterns emerging here and slowly developing into complex patterns, which ultimately coexist along with the Harappan ceramics also. Along with this, we have the gray colored ceramics, which is very typical of the Kalibangan fabric F also. But interestingly, we don't have the incised ware, which is a hallmark ceramic of the early Harappan phase at Kalibanga. Along with this, we have evidences of ideological spread and sharing of ideologies, like this stylized people motif on one ceramic, which is very sacred in South Asia. Along with it, we have another stylized horned headgear motif, or horned deity motif, which is again very much widespread in many sites of the early Harappan phase. And interestingly, we have a lot of graffitis on the pottery, post-fired and pre-fired graffitis. Some of them later became part of the Harappan script also. So we have a wide range of other cultural elements in the form of copper implements, copper implements and also micro stated beads. I mean, the right one is a comparison. This is from Harappa courtesy Mark Kenoyer. So stated micro bead industry, it's present even though we don't have any evidence of manufacturing, actual manufacturing, even for the agate carnelian beads or the other semi-precious stone beads. We don't have any evidence of craft activities, but the presence of these sort of beads clearly indicate contacts with other sides, maybe some sort of trade transactions may be happening, and they were exchanging these things in return of some raw materials or other commodities which they were trading upon. So we have a good number of lapis and other semi-precious stones in the early Harappan phase itself here, which proliferate in the Harappan phase. And interestingly, this kind of spindle holes have been discovered, and 5 of them came from a single floor level, which I showed earlier in an early Harappan house complex, and they also have graffiti. I mean, if you look at the graffiti coming from the same house plan, and they have the same motif, which might indicate that it could have been a ownership mark of a of a weaver or a person who is engaging in spinning them. And analysis of these spindle holes, it indicates a smaller, the weight analysis, it indicates a smaller spindle holes to larger spindle holes, maybe indicating spinning of both finer and thicker threads. This number, it increases in the Harappan phase, but the smaller and the larger spindle holes, it continues, the range, it continues. Here we see a range around 23 centimeter to 23 grams to 26 grams, and one isolated spindle hole, it's around 48 grams. So this is the sort of assemblage we find during the early Harappan phase. And coming to the Harappan phase, we don't have a very good evidences because of large scale destruction happened to the site, and also a substantial portion of the site was demolished and removed by the landowners. But nevertheless, we could trace a part of a fortification on one corner of a house complex, or a street complex. So we could trace it, and it was running nearly 20 meter to 30 meters on each direction, with a corner based in. And interestingly, there were different color bricks also. We could identify the different colored bricks that were in use for constructing this fortification, and it was enclosing this habitation of the Harappan phase on one side. One arm of the fortification we could trace, and the street running adjacent to this fortification. So it's a clear indication of a planning and location of the house complexes in a good planned manner when compared to the early Harappan period. We have not found planning in the early Harappan period, some facade structures spread across the entire site. But here we have a definitive planning. At least 2 divisions have been found, even though only one division could be traced with the fortification. The other division, we could not trace anything. So this is the general layout, and only this portion we were fortunate to excavate, and we could salvage everything. But there is a continuation of the structural phases, even in the Harappan phase. Starting from here, it has a succession of house complexes, and one complete house complex was excavated, which incidentally also brought out a Harappan seal. So again, the ratio shifts to 1:2:4, as it happens in this part of the Harappan civilization, where the early Harappan phase has a 1:2:3 ratio. Here it shifts to 1:2:4 ratio. And we have the habitation spread across an area of nearly 400 meter by 400 meter approximately. That makes it to nearly 16 hectare site. It's a moderate town, one could say, but we could hardly find 20 to 30% of the entire habitation in the form of structural remains. This is from another part of the site where we could trace a street here. You can see a street and the house complexes on either side. And this is the phase where we could understand that there was a last phase of Harappan period, which have been completely removed by the local villagers, because this area, it is marked by large scale pits, which were dug by the Harappans, last phase of the Harappans, and their presence could be known only in the form of these pits, and also some storage vessels that have been dug into their floor levels, or even cutting into their floor levels. So this evidence only made us to understand the presence of another phase of the Harappan culture here. And the street also, it extends. When we extended another trench here, it was extending further into the agricultural field, and it might have been spread even in a much bigger area, because of the agricultural activities, which one can see here also. It's kind of completely obliterated in many of the areas. And we found house complexes at regular intervals in a stratigraphical manner, and also accompanied with these kind of grinding stones. And this is a typical grinding stone of the Kalyana stones, quartzite, which is coming from the nearby Kalyana hills, that have been documented thanks to Randalla. And this is the typical variety of quartzite that is coming from these hills. And even today, they are being mined, and they are being finished for various products like this, and they are supplied to a bigger distance. And one more kind of grinding stone what we found from here at Karanpura is this kind of gray color sandstone. And they again might have come from the Gagar riverbed, or the upper Gagar sources, again sourced by Randalla. So the picture emerging is that the grinding stone procurement, and also maybe raw materials might have been procured and also supplied to other sites. That seems to a very good possibility, because of the proximity of Karanpura, and also the Kalyana hills located here. And we find this type of quartzite in most of the sites, in Mitatal, Farmana, Rakigadi. Everywhere we find these kind of stones, and Karanpura sits here on the most important maybe trade route. And ultimately Kalyana sandstone, it is also found in Harappa, as recorded from the excavations at Harappa. So this might have been an important source of revenue, or maybe some important transactions for the Karanpura Harappans, who might have procured and supplied the raw materials to different localities. This I am telling purely based on its location on the river, Drishadvati river, maybe on the trade route, located on the trade route, and on the visual examination, and also results from other Harappans. And similarly, they have procured the gray sandstone from the Shivalik foothill riverbeds. This gray colored sandstone, which complete implements also we could find from here. So this might have been one of the most important aspects related to the overall economy of Karanpura Harappans. And we find the introduction of Harappan ceramics. These are examples from other sites, but we have very few Harappan ceramics, hardly 1%, I would say, of this typical black painted red slip Harappan ware. And the remaining else, everything is the local Soti Siswal ceramic, which have evolved into different forms and shapes. And along with that, we find some certain peculiar painted ceramics, like this row of human figures. And interestingly, the headgear, it is intertwined into each other. You can see this row of 6 humans holding each other, maybe sort of some dance ceremony, and the headgear of each other is crossing each other's headgear. So this is an very interesting and maybe an isolated example from this site, and we don't have any other example from other sites too. And similarly here, a row of a circle of birds have been depicted, maybe in a swift motion, and they are flying, and one is rising and flying away. Again, on the lip portion, we can see the loops, which closely resembles the loop here, and here it has been completely kind of transformed as a headgear in the lower ceramic. So we have examples, examples of the Harappan ceramics like this perforated jar. The exact function we have yet to determine, even though some residue analysis are giving some clues about that, but they were used in association with another larger vessel. So the function may be in associated with the larger vessel, and the typical Harappan cooking vessels from the site of the Harappan variety, as well as the local imitations. You can see the local varieties also with the local clay they were making. Along with that, we are seeing some of the ceramics even with an analysis of a bare eye, one can understand they are not from the local clay. They are certainly imports, and one such import is this kind of a cooking vessel with the a very beautiful finish and a red slip on the shoulder portion. So these sort of cooking vessels are also found, and some of the very few painted Harappan ceramics, but the majority of them are the continuation of the Soti Siswal ceramics. In particular, the ceramics with the black colored decoration on the shoulder as well as the neck portion, with a variety of painted motifs which appear now, with the checker motif, with loops on the neck, loops on the shoulder. So these sort of ceramics, they appear and they transform themselves, and also these type of ceramics which have a grooved pattern on the shoulder portion, which start to appear only in the earlier phase here. And interestingly, we have this sort of the incised where or the fabric D of the Kalibangan, which appear here in the Harappan phase. So this is really interesting. It is not very far away from Kalibangan, but even though it seems that the Drishadvati ceramic tradition, at least the lower Drishadvati ceramic tradition, was very much different from the Gagar Hakda river sites. And this one example really helps to kind of understand this better, and also along with the continuation of the Soti Siswal ceramics, which dominate the entire Harappan period ceramic collection. So it's a clear indication that even though certain elements of Harappan period permeate into this region, they are introduced maybe for different commercial interest, or maybe for procuring raw materials, but the regional culture, it remains. I mean, it continues, and that can be better demonstrated by the continuation of the ceramic remains. And we see in every form, ceramic form and shape, we see examples of these. The typical Harappan shapes are very few in number, and the local varieties, they predominate, and they exceed much in number. And we have a plethora of these sort of miniature vessels, and most of them with the graffiti, which proliferate now. I mean, the graffiti which we noticed in the early Harappan phase, now it proliferate much larger in number, and we have even painted graffiti also. Some other forms also appear. Examples are shown here. And interestingly, the spindle holes, it proliferate. I mean, it's really interesting that Karanpura might have been a very important center for at least textile weaving, maybe, or at least for spinning the threads. Now we find more number. In total, there are around 20 spindle holes from the Harappan phase, from the very limited excavations. Now it ranges between 12 and 55 grams, and six holes are in the 12 to 30, and four in the 33 and 55 grams. So they're spinning both finer and thicker threads, and it seems one of the most important occupation at this site of Karanpura. And interestingly, we see other things also proliferate. Thousands and thousands of these kind of terracotta cakes and other forms also, the fist shaped terracotta cakes, and many of them have very thick encrustation of soot mark, clearly indicating that heating. And it could be the heat retainers. I mean, they could have been used for heat retainers. And examples of carriageways clearly indicated by hollow framed and solid framed examples, and some sort of element of puppetry here. In the case of a bull figurine, one can find a provision for placing a head separately that could be pulled up and down using a thread. There is a hole on the hump here that can be used to pull the head up and down. And there are whistles which give very good sound even today. When cleaned and blown, it gives very good sound. And some of the other urban features also present here. Maybe these were some exotic elements that were coming to the site, or maybe the elites might have procured, and they were using it for their usage. So the copper implements also proliferate here. We see arrowheads of the typical Harappan forms and other copper implements. Along with that, also bone tools are also found, and maybe thousands and thousands of terracotta bangles. I mean, this is the maybe the tradition of the entire Drishadvati plain sites. Actually, I mean, even Rakigadi also have a large number of terracotta bangles here. On a rough estimate, we could nearly count more than 100,000 fragments of terracotta bangles. I mean, we could document at least 15,000 odd of them. And it indicates that was the kind of ornament they were wearing at that particular point of time. It was most very easy to manufacture them. And in the absence of maybe better ornaments reaching this site, because we find very few examples of shell bangles. Obviously, the shell sources were from Kutch region of Gujarat. So they were reaching in very few numbers, and stated, of course, a few micro beads, and also the typical disc beads of the Harappan period. It appears during this period, along with some other special type of beads. And again, the Karanpura sits at very important junction of maybe kind of facilitating the trade of state aid coming from important sources of this northern Rajasthan. Related to Karanpura is the analysis from Mitatal, where when we analyze the seal, we find the source from the northern Rajasthan sources. So the northern Rajasthan sources were very much active during the Harappan period, and definitely Karanpura might have also facilitated this trade further and to reaching to other Harappan sites. Interestingly, we have a good number of agate carnelian beads of both the long bicones as well as also the smaller short bicones also. So we have a good number, and also this decorated cornelian beads also. Interestingly, the imitated variety is also found here. One can understand from the presence of thousands of terracotta bangles, these sort of imitated varieties, one can understand they were replicating the kind of sophisticated raw materials in the form of much mundane and much easier available raw materials, so that they can use them for their personal decoration. So this is the other raw materials of beads which we find here, that clearly indicates some sort of contacts, either through exchange network. They were participating in some exchange network. That's how they were procuring, because they are not manufacturing anything here. We don't have debitage, we don't have manufacturing waste, we don't have any evidence of craft activities, either steatite or agate carnelian. Everything is reaching here in a finished form. We don't have any rough outs here. So that is one clear indication. And technology wise, how these beads could have been manufactured, three different technologies we see here. One is pecking on both sides, pecking on one side, and step drilling on the other side, and drilling from both the edges. Again, a step drilling pattern has been seen in the long tubular as well as the long bicones, which we find. And the chert, the Rory chert also reaches here. So overall, the picture, what it emerges is that they had a very good contact with the other sites, other different regions. So that's how the different types of finished products are coming. Raw materials are scarce. Grinding stones, again, they might have been procuring and redistributing, because we find large number of grinding stones at this site. And also some of the important clues regarding the maybe the graffitis and the literacy of the people. I mean, we can see the graffiti on different parts, on the rim of the vessels, on the shoulder, on the base, and inside the vessels also. Some parts, like we can see, this is a painted graffiti on the base of a bowl, and another painted graffiti on the shoulder portion, along with another pre-fired graffiti. So we have a variety, and some of them are correspond to the Harappan signs. Some are abstract and maybe indicating some sort of maybe indicating the stellars or the stellar pattern, or maybe the settlements. There could be different interpretations for this. So we have a variety of graffiti from this site, and some evidences to indicate they were actually executing some sort of trade relations or trade transactions. So we have a very rudimentary terracotta seal, but there are two Harappan seals coming from this site. And interestingly, one can notice a people leaf pattern here instead of the mangar, which used to appear in the square stamp seals. So this is very much interesting, and only from Kalibangan, from a sealing, we have a people leaf motif shown here, and in the absence of any script. And we have from Lothal the script appearing as it is, except it was a 4-lettered inscription. Here it's a 2-lettered inscription. The first and the last sign, it is again repeated in Lothal. Here, this is another tablet from Mohenjo-daro, where the people leaf, it forms part of an inscription. So it's very difficult to clearly give some idea or indication about why they have used the people leaf. It's not forming part of any inscription, but it has completely replaced the mangar here. So I don't know if there are any other examples for this kind of seal. I have deeply looked into the corpus also. I could not find any such example except this example from Kalibangan. So this is very interesting. Maybe some more analysis or related evidences from other side may help in further understanding the importance. And one more seal, it's a single lettered inscription, only fish pattern is there, and there are 4 dots, and that have some parallels with some other sides. So these 2 seals, along with one typical Harappan weight, 1/4 of the mean weight, and other some triangular and other weights of the period, indicates maybe a commercial transaction and the importance of the site. And with regard to the diet, we could not find floral remains, even though we tried hard. We could not find any of the no charred grains from this site, but a good collection of faunal remains could be recovered from this site, which was analyzed by Professor Joglekar, and he has identified a variety of domestic and wild animals, and also other freshwater species which are represented from among the collection. So overall, if we look into the findings represented by Karanpura, which is located in the lower DrishadvatiPlains, it has helped us in understanding in better the Soti Siswal phase, at least the early Harappan phase in this particular part of the plains, river plains, because we don't have such a thick deposit from Spoti or Siswal. So we could understand better the regional manifestation of Siswal here, and how the Harappans came here. The settlement of the Harappans starts around 2500 BCE, maybe 100 years later of the typical Harappan chronology, which we get from the site of Harappa, and it might have come to an end around 2000 BCE. And if we can add one more, another 100 years, because the last phase was removed by the villages. So this is the complete history of nearly 1000 years, and the location of Karanpura at a typical juncture on the Drishadvati River, it tends us to interpret that they could have participated in the procurement and redistribution of important raw materials, most particularly the Kalyana type of grinding stone raw materials, and also some copper and stated raw materials also. And the presence of agate, cornelian, and other raw material finished products, particularly no evidence for craft activities. They might have participated again in commercial transactions, and these could have been arrived only through trade activities, and that has been substantiated by the seals and weights also. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for patient hearing. And to conclude, this is a slide from Dholavira, near Dholavira, and today Dholavira was inscribed in the World Heritage list, and today it was just in the concluded session of World Heritage Committee, the announcement was made. I'm very happy to announce this news.
Thank you very much, Prabhakar. That was excellent. And I mean, very exciting for me, being very familiar with the archaeology of that region. And yeah, it's fantastic to see so much of the material. I mean, I was lucky enough to go and visit